Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friends Before Kickoff. As always, I'm Kyle here with Finn, and we are super excited to bring you today's episode. We're going to look at Manchester United and Manchester City and discuss which players we would keep, which players we would loan, and which players we'll sell, as well as which players we'd like the club to bring in this summer. So, as we've mentioned in previous episodes, Finn is a Manchester United fan. I'm a Manchester City fan. Hence the name, Friends Before Kickoff. Although, I think we're friends during kickoff too.
Uh, that's been tested before, but
Yeah, well, you know what? We've probably been better than you as long as we've supported the team, but you had those Ole Gunnar Solskjaer days when you kept beating us. And especially in 2019-20, when we didn't win the title, it was a really tough year when I think Ole did the double over us that year, honestly.
yeah, those were the days. Still no trophies, but yeah, I'll take what I can get. You don't have a
Yeah,
Champions League, so I'll keep holding on to that.
yeah, that was going to get said eventually on the podcast.
I had to get it over with early.
Well, so do you want to go first or do you want to do Man City first then?
Um, why don't we do Man City first? I feel like that one's a
Okay.
little more straightforward than United's.
Yeah, I was like, this might not make that interesting of an episode, but I think Manchester United, I think there's a lot of players that divide opinions amongst United fans. So I'm interested to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think City are actually or have been a well-run club, so transfer windows aren't actually chaos and speculation, and they have a pretty clear plan.
Well, all the names come out ASAP. Like the only shocks in recent years are like what, like Bernardo Silva was kind of
Yeah.
out of nowhere. Mahrez was kind of out of nowhere, but like there was links with everyone else pretty much like well before the deal happened. And like the Reddit and the Blue Moon forums and stuff, they find that stuff pretty quick, and then it just gets confirmed by Sam Lee or Fabrizio or whatever, and then
They do their
so it's
business
not
well.
it's
Yeah.
it's exciting, but it's not, yeah, it's not anything resembling yours.
I think I would rather have the Man City transfer window than the United one. It gets exhausting like a weekend at United when there's one of the major accounts, the Muppeteers for United, have a list of all the players we've been linked to so far, and I think they've just cracked 100 today.
This
Um,
summer.
yeah, yeah,
Wow.
which is, and I mean, at least 60% of those are purely agents and other clubs just using our name. But every day you're convinced that we're going to sign Vitinha or Nunez or whoever, and then you get your heart broken and you're on to the next target. Okay, so you give me a list of City, the squad basically, and only one name under loan, and that's Liam Delap.
Yeah. I just don't think he'll get enough opportunities to see his development out. I think he's 2021, and we just brought in Alvarez and Holland.
Yeah.
I kept McAtee and Palmer as other guys from the youth team in because I think there actually will be if we do have outgoings on the wings, they will get time at least in the cup, and that'll be enough for them. Um, I used to worry a lot about players being in the team and not getting enough game time, but I think Phil Foden has worked out just fine, and he's been in the team since he was 16 and like barely playing, but he's training with the players and he's working under Pep Guardiola. It's pretty similar to the experience he would get if he went to whatever Girona, Troyes.
Yeah. Well,
So
and it's
and he's got rumors with Premier League clubs too. So
oh well, that's good. I mean, that makes it you feel a lot better about loaning him when it's that kind of experience. Is he where I guess where do you see Delap? Like, is he a player if there was a serious offer for him? Would you be upset if he was sold, or are you really kind of ambivalent?
I'd be mad if they sold him right now because I don't think he's proven himself. Like, I think they will, it's probably 50-50 at this point if they'll end up selling him just because of literally Holland and Alvarez were assigned to the club for like what, 5-6 years. And yeah, I don't know. And but it's too early because he doesn't have goals in the Premier League. All his goals are at like the under 23, under 21 level. So I think if he has a season, scores 10 goals, maybe you could get 20 million for him. Sure. And I'd be sad because he's one of our products and he's been really good at the youth level. But at the end of the day, like, we've already signed Holland and Alvarez. Like, can't imagine being him
Yeah,
having that insane season he had, I think a year or two ago, where he was like a goal per game at the youth level. And then Man City are just like sign two strikers.
yeah. It's not easy being a youth prospect at any of the big clubs. I mean, there's unless you're, I mean, even if you're Phil Foden, it's difficult to break in. I mean, it took Rashford wasn't kind of that high level of prospect, but took like 5 senior strikers getting injured, I think, for him to even get his debut at the last second. It's not easy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's a whole conversation, but I don't know. I'm not too worried about Liam Dow, but I don't think he's like a generational talent that we're missing out on or anything. Like I think the club knows what it has in Palmer and McAtee, and I think they're both probably clear. So
Yeah,
that's why they're are willing to let Delap go out on loan this summer.
fair enough. All right, well that's all we have in loan. So I guess keep and sell will blend a little bit. Because we don't have to go through everybody that you've kept. I mean, I think most of these are fairly straightforward. The goalkeepers kind of speak for themselves. Stefan's a good backup to Ederson, and Scott Carson's obviously a Premier League legend. You can't lose him.
He's read up for another season, man. What more can you ask for? Of course, he's on keep.
Perfect. And I don't think your back line has many questions around it, particularly if you can get some depth at left back. You've kept Zinchenko in your list. I know there's been some rumors linking him with a move away from the club. Is that
The only circumstance which I'd be okay with him leaving is if he says I want to leave and get first team minutes, because obviously I don't want to like stop him from doing that. And I think Everton do have genuine interest. I mean, there's a link there with that guy from Fantasy that I can't. His name is eluding me right now. The Ukrainian dude.
Oh, Mikolenko?
Yeah,
Yeah,
the boys from the national team.
that makes sense.
I don't know about Everton. You know, I hope they don't get relegated next year.
I hope they do.
But yeah. So if he wants to get first team football, but I think he'll honestly compete if we sign a left back for that starting position, at least in the first year. He's proven. I still want a left back just to have a natural out and out left back in the squad, but like I'm not going to be mad if Zinchenko is playing well enough that he's keeping him out of the team, because he has shown at times he has really high highs. I think about the assist he had against PSG when Ederson hit him and he ran down the left wing and crossed it in for Mahrez, I think. Like, this guy is a good footballer, probably not at left back, but if he wants to stay and compete for his place, which he's had opportunities to leave in previous windows and came out and said, I want to stay and fight for my place. So if the club says to him, listen, like we brought a left back in, but that doesn't mean like you're on the bench all year, then that's why I kept him on keep, because I think he's a good footballer. I think he's even perhaps among the top 10 left backs in the world, but Cucurella probably has a higher ceiling.
That's a hot take. But fair enough. I mean, and it doesn't really seem like City lose in either case. I mean, if you keep him for another season and Cucurella displaces him, and you can still probably sell him for whatever you'd get now, or the competition really helps both players, and you're getting an signing and an improved squad player.
Yeah, I don't think Zinchenko's irreplaceable, but I think
No.
he's definitely a cult hero and has definitely had a part in a lot of trophies. I'll take. I'm at top 10. Would you say it's top 10, top half of the left backs in the Prem, man?
Okay, well
He's
that's
not
for a
bad.
different
Like he's
podcast.
pretty
No,
good.
no, no.
Pretty good attacking. Like I'm saying that as someone who critiques him a lot, because I don't think he's that good defensively.
Fair enough. I mean, he's not a liability, for sure. That's
That is the next
not,
podcast we're
yeah.
doing. Number 1, Alfonso Davies. Number 2.
We don't have to after Alfonso Davies. Who cares?
Yeah, you're right.
All right, so your midfield on keep is pretty straightforward. You've kept all the big names. I think that's another piece of the team that functions pretty well when everyone's fit. Your forwards, you mentioned Palmer and McAtee. I think you're right. There'll probably be opportunities for them if Sterling and Jesus leave. I guess the only other notable one, it's been clear they won't loan Alvarez as well. They rate him highly enough that he's going to be the backup to Holland right away. You've kept Grealish and keep. Is that a personal preference or just an acknowledgement that he won't be sold?
I'm not lost on him. I'm not writing him off. The club, all the quotes are coming out from whatever. I don't even know who's saying them. Guys that are like executives at the club, higher ups, saying that, the club is confident that he'll have a big part in the team's success next year. So I agree with that, and I do think he can play a lot better than he is. I think he'll start. He's underperforming his expected goals and expected assists heavily, and I don't think he's actually a poor fit in the team. I think he's kind of a weird fit out there on the left because he's not really going for goal a lot. So kind of the thing he does is just pass it back to Cancelo. So it's kind of a one trick pony kind of thing. But That being said, I don't know where he gets in the 11 because I am starting Kevin De Bruyne, Bernardo, and on the wings I'm starting Foden, Mahrez, and I don't see that changing. I think all those players are in their peaks right now. Like for Man City anyway. I mean, Foden's going to get better, but like Mahrez was our top goal scorer last season. Are you going to drop him? Are you going to drop Bernardo last year for Grealish? Like I don't know,
Yeah,
but
I guess actually, um, that makes sense. I mean, if you try and sell and you run into the Lukaku problem too that Chelsea have had, where no one's going to pay the amount of money you did, and I mean, unlike Lukaku, I'd argue Grealish is. I mean, he's shown in the Prem he's good enough to at least be a incredibly luxurious squad player.
I know it's like the biggest like, and that like some folks don't deal in if ands or buts, but and they only deal in absolutes. But like literally, just imagine. Okay, so he had that sick goal against Leipzig in the Champions League where he cut in, scored. He scored a volley against West Ham. Like he missed a couple goals, right? And then imagine if he puts away that goal against Real Madrid. Like none of us are
Yeah.
talking about flop, man. Like yes, what does he have? 3 goals in the Premier League for 100 mil. Like, but like honestly, when you're Man City and your midfield's this good, like I don't think they're too fussed about it. Like
He is.
it is when the transfer happened from when the transfer happened to now, it is a lot more conceivable that he leaves this club a flop. But I literally wouldn't even be mad. Like man, like we just signed Holland. Like I don't
Yeah.
care, and like we already have a Bernardo Silva and Kevin De Bruyne.
If he buries that goal, I wonder if we talk about him a lot more like Havertz, where the output isn't quite there yet, but he steps up when you need, and that's all particularly with a team like he has around him, you maybe don't need him to have 15 goals, 15 assists.
It's a very good comp, except Havertz actually scored the goal.
Well, yeah, I mean
But at that point,
it's
people
different.
were saying Havertz 80 mil, like didn't have a great first debut season.
Yeah.
Wasn't in the 11 consistently.
Still in his
played that
second
game,
season
yeah.
has been
Yeah.
good, but hasn't had the output that you would expect for a player that level.
Yeah,
But it
I
hasn't
wouldn't be.
held Chelsea.
I wouldn't. It happened in my career mode. I wouldn't be surprised if Jack Grealish in his third season is his big season next year.
Yeah.
Because even Bernardo Silva, right? Bernardo Silva only got into the 11 because De Bruyne was injured, right? In his second season with Man City, Bernardo's second season, and then he played alongside David Silva.
I think having Holland will help him too. Just
Yeah,
as someone to play off of.
yeah, a lot of those expected assists will definitely turn
That's
into
true.
goals. Yeah.
All right, so that moves us past keep. You've only got 2 names in sell. I think these are both pretty well known. Sterling and Jesus, both linked to big London clubs. For both, I've seen around 50 million euros or pounds. The numbers vary, but I think those both make sense this being their time to move on. Particularly if there's offers on the table of that size. Don't know if you have any deeper thoughts on that.
Certainly. I've kind of gone down a couple different trains of thought or whatever, and I'm interested to see which one I don't know what resonates with you, but do you think that I was thinking if Man City wants to be, first of all, we have to win a Champions League, but if we want to be talked about with the Real Madrids, the Barças, the Bayerns, there's going to come a point where our team is just so good that we're going to have to sell guys that are some people consider legends for our club. Yeah. Guys like Gabriel Jesus who have scored half a goal a game their whole career. Look at Gabriel Jesus's numbers. I know it's in the cups, but for Man City, for him to leave for, some guys are saying we should get 60, 70 mil, but they're both on the end of their contract. They're both have not been consistently in the starting 11 for a while now. And they're also look who they're making way for. That's the way I see it. It's unfortunate. And as much as I give him a hard time, and as much as Sterling is a roller coaster to have in your team because he has such high highs and then such bad misses and big public incidents, I would, the best option I would have liked to see would have been him to be the player who he was at his peak all the time, and no more misses, and he's out of the media, and Pep doesn't have to back him up after every press conference. But yeah, I don't know. It's just like I said with Grealish, it's very hard. You're not going to start him over Foden, your academy starlet, who's has way more potential, and Mara's your top scorer. And he if he wants to be a starter, this is the time to sell him. Otherwise you're going to lose him on a free. Now I don't know, to Chelsea, feels like a move, feels like the exact kind of move that would bite us in the ass,
It
and
does.
he's going to score against us. But hopefully, it's in a game that we still are 5 points at the top after. So,
No, fair enough. I mean, I think this is how, if you want to be a club that kind of sustains the level of success that City have been experiencing so far, these are the kind of tough decisions that you run into where I don't think you would can really argue that Sterling and Jesus probably walk into most teams in the Premier League, much less even most teams in Europe. But I mean, it's sort of impressive that these are two such high profile players and they're leaving amicably. I mean, you wonder if you keep them another season or do, the classic United move, which I'm sure we'll bring up a couple times later, give them a 2 or 3 year contract just to preserve their value. You could see, and then sit them on the bench. It goes a lot worse. They get annoyed, their value goes down. So I think you're right. It's the right time to sell them, particularly if you have these offers on the table. I mean, I'm sure Jesus is going to score against you as well for Arsenal. I mean, it'll probably be the one and a 5-1, but it'll happen when it's 1-1 and you'll feel bad. But it's sort of what you have to do. I mean, United under Ferguson did it all the time with its turnover of high level players, and it was often a lot less amicable than just the club and the player are ready to move on. So I think it's tough. I mean, particularly if you are a City fan and you see the numbers and have these positive memories, but I think they're both good moves, smart moves.
yeah, I think I've never felt more spoiled as a City fan than when Jesus, the rumors came out he wanted to go to Arsenal, or that Arsenal wanted him, and then he scored 4 goals the next game, and I was still like, "Nah, get him out of the club! Like, come on, this guy from Argentina is better."
That was peak City. And even, I
Yeah.
mean, Sterling's what? He's up there with highest scoring Englishman in the Champions League, I think. But I mean, it really seems like he's not hit the highs he has in the
He's
past.
also
And
27.
yeah,
He's not like there's
yeah.
much left to do to mold him.
No, he sort of is what he is as a player. I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll transform one way or another at Chelsea, but it does seem like it's time to go from the City. I mean, he doesn't have he's been there a while, but he's not an academy player. And yeah, it feels right.
The one worry that you have is, and this is what I was thinking during the last game of the season against Villa, and why I was happy then when they subbed Sterling on, was he does have that ability to just come out of nowhere at the back post on these plays, on these pep plays where he builds it all the way to the back and crosses it in. And we've seen Grealish, that's what's kind of lacking in this game. Gary Neville pointed it out on one of the broadcasts. And Foden and Mahrez have it, but I would say Sterling does make better runs. And there's been articles saying Sterling is world class because of his runs alone. Like, it doesn't matter if you can't finish. And I don't know if I agree with that, because there's been some high profile misses. But
Yeah.
I think that that's something that Foden just needs to learn, or maybe start playing Alvarez, or Grealish needs to learn.
Yeah, no, that makes
And
sense.
it might not even be a problem because you'll have Holland. So
Well, I mean, that the one question I would have then, and I guess to touch on, because we haven't really the elephant in the room, which is Holland. Um, it feels, particularly Sterling leaving, like a market change in how City are playing, with him leaving to be replaced by Holland, and then bringing up a real backup striker in Alvarez, going from this time when um, post Aguero, when Jesus is the only striker you've really had, and he often doesn't play, and it's a lot of sort of inverted wingers and players who you wouldn't consider to be traditional strikers being replaced by two really, I mean, modern strikers, but also what you would consider close to traditional for just number nines. You think this will mark a major shift in the way City play football? Or is this just being overblown, and they're incredible talents and there will still be 2 or 3 10s and wingers surrounding them?
yeah, I think that all that's going to happen is it'll be a similar minor change to Pep starting playing an inverted. Actually, that was a pretty big change, the inverted fullbacks thing. But you know what I mean? Like, they're still going to play with the same philosophy, and looking at Guardiola's spaces on the pitch, the half spaces, right? There's all the rules where you can only have 3 in a vertical half space and 2, all that stuff. They're just going to do it with Erling Haaland, right? Like, he's still going to be asked to get involved in the link up play, and I think his link up play is actually very good. I don't think he has a lot of assists, but if you want to talk about layoffs and build up play, like, he's pretty good. He's got very quick feet. But I think they're still going to, in every other way, play the same and play
Yeah.
possession. And I think so the argument is, yeah, so City have won two Premier Leagues in a row playing without a striker. But how many games have there been? Think against the game where basically any game against Tottenham have you watched where you said they used to say, what if we had a Harry Kane there, right? But now it's what if we had an Erling Haaland there to put these chances away, all these misses.
Yeah.
And so and also like I think you could argue that Pep has had to make these minuscule tweaks in his teams because people start to figure out how to play against Man City. And I think having Holland, like, 99% advantage, 1% little disadvantage is that you're going to have to figure out how to accommodate Erling Holland in your team.
Yeah.
Oh, like,
Yeah, there are worse problems to have.
it'll probably just be, okay, so Grealish, Foden and Mahrez, instead of walking it all the way to the line, they'll probably start putting balls in earlier because they have someone to put it on top of their head and they won't have to worry about literally walking it into the net.
No, that makes sense.
And that De Bruyne ball is coming back. They're going to play him on the right. I'm telling you right now, he's going to get 10 assists doing that next year.
Oh, I believe you. I think he'll get 10 assists directly to Holland, much less the rest of the team. Yeah. No, it's I think it is definitely overblowing it to say that this will be a negative. Haaland's too good a player to pass up, and too good a player, I think, not to fit in a Pep Guardiola system.
Well, yeah, I'm not sure if Robert Lewandowski was exactly a Pep striker. Like, I think Gabriel Jesus is a Pep striker, or like Carlos Tevez even. Like not Lewandowski, and neither was Aguero, right? But it's really just like, come on, guys, play a little defense, all right? Like just press a little bit. We want to win the ball off the pitch, like, and they're like, okay, and they still score all the goals. So
it's true.
I think you could say that every striker he's worked with has been better, despite you think, they might lose a bit of the goals if they're turn into Bobby Firmino and start defending, but I think they've all gotten better and scored more goals since working with Pep.
Agreed. I don't think it'll be a problem, really. I think it's an interesting, thing to watch for how they shift playing, but I can't see it being, both for Holland, for the rest of the team, for Pep. I don't see it being a problem. So this brings us to the last section for City, which is your buys. You've just got, I guess, 2 points, 3 names down here. I guess the first of these is Maxence Caqueret. This is a player from Liga. I don't know too much about him, so I guess just tell me about him. Where is he at in the transfer process? What made City go in for him? Is he a starter? Is he youth?
No. You don't know Caqueret on Lyon?
No, I don't.
Oh, no. I'm saying I don't want Calvin Phillips. They're going to go for Calvin Phillips.
Right.
Apparently, we haven't put a bid in yet, but it's expected we will this week. I put Caqueret because I was just writing an article for fun. And I looked into Phillips' numbers versus Caqueret, and they're almost identical, albeit Phillips is in the Premier League, right? They have, a lot of tackles, pressures per 90, that kind of stuff, interceptions. But Caqueret just has a much better short passing game, which is what I think we need in a City DM, like Rodri. I mean, optimally, like Fernandinho and Rodri are both good long passers, but Phillips doesn't. Phillips is actually an okay long passer, but I just think that the tight little game, like a Busquets type mold, would be a much better fit. So I'm really kind of wondering if they think they can mold Phillips, or if they just think, okay, we have Rodri as a starter, let's have this guy who's just a real destroyer on the bench that can just come in and put a tackle in. I'm not sure, but I also think Caqueret is half the price. He's 22 million. Again, 85 potential in career mode. I signed him, and he's doing much better than Calvin Phillips would do. Although we still haven't won the Champions League.
Oh, well, maybe Phillips will be the key. No, it makes sense. I mean, I don't think Phillips is a bad option. I mean, particularly given his Premier League experience, and I think he'll do exactly what it says on the box and defend and help in the build-up, although he's not a particularly attacking player. But I get, particularly for a position where you don't desperately need reinforcements, wanting to go for sort of the cheaper, maybe higher upside player in Caqueret. So I think that's fair enough. We'll be really curious to see what City, and I guess what Leeds with Phillips do in this negotiation.
Yeah, I think if we're going to spend a little bit more money, we should spend a little bit more money on left back. Because the people are saying, okay, Rodri can't play every game of the season, and he can't. But Rodri played our most games last season. Like, like he can play in all the big games. Like we just need someone to play cup games, and I think Kakare is absolutely capable. He's played in the Champions League, since the age of 19.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. It's also one of those signings where they beat us in the Champions League and then we sign their player because we're richer, like we did with Monaco,
Yeah,
Bernardo,
that make you feel good.
and that other guy. Yeah, yeah. It does. I mean, PSG are doing it. They got Lille's manager, like the only
That's
manager
true.
to beat them other than Monaco in the past 7 years. Yeah.
No, I get it. Plus, you always sort of have one prospect you kind of fall in love with every transfer window, whether your club's actually in form or not. I definitely get that. So that brings us to the last position there, which is left back. You've written the obvious name, the one that's been heavily linked in Mark Cucurella, but you've also added Ait Nouri from Wolves to that. I guess, do you have a preference between them? Is Ait Nouri sort of your own addition, or is that one that City been linked with?
Both. I think it's the only other left back we've been linked with this window, but obviously for years we've been linked with Grimaldo and Gaia from Valencia.
Mm.
Yeah, Kukral is the big one, the one that I think will happen. But I put Aitnuri like more as a backup because they're saying City would back out if it was over 50 mil. Again, I don't know if that was euros or pounds. I wouldn't be mad with either. I don't know. I don't watch a lot of Ait Nuri, to be honest, but he's younger, and he has similar attacking numbers, but he doesn't really have the defensive numbers of Cucurella. Although I think he's a beneficiary of Graham Potter's system.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't know. At this point, I'm kind of just happy to get a left back, honestly. And
Fair enough.
he's got the resume with La Masia. He was good on Getafe and La Liga. He was Brighton's player of the year, most tackles, I think, or top 3 tackles in the Premier League, although that's not adjusted for per 90 or possession or anything. So I don't know. There's enough there that, I mean, like we've definitely signed worse players, like,
Yeah. Well,
um,
he's.
like
I mean,
there's transfers that I've been more worried about than this one. Like I think there's a very good chance Cucurella will be. He just has to be. He just has to be good enough for our 11. He can be
yeah.
the worst player on the pitch, right? Like when you have Cancelo, Diaz, Laporte, like you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. Oh,
The
absolutely.
bar is low. Like he just has to be better than Zinchenko defensively, really.
He's good enough to be a starter, I think. And even, I mean, who knows if that's a starter in a random Premier League game or in the Champions League final? But I think you're right. Just getting a left back in the door should be City's main goal. And I think he's one that has a high enough ceiling that you could see him really thriving with this team. But at a minimum, he's probably an upgrade from Zinchenko. And it is rotation and will, I think, really fit well into the Pep system.
Yeah, I mean, just having the luxury. It shouldn't really be a luxury of having a
Just a left back.
left-footed left back. And I think it might see us try to play 5 at the back. Pep tried to do that with Jesus and Aguero up top when Ben Mendy was playing in the team. Whenever Mendy was fit, which was like whatever 20 total games in the first 2 years that he was at City, he would always try to play a back 3. And he did that at Bayern Munich too. So I'm wondering if we might see it with Cucurella and Cancelo. But yeah, I don't know. At the same time, it would make it hard to play all your midfield that you wanted and all the attackers.
Yeah.
But I
He's
think
got
it would
time.
fit with Laporte, Diaz, and Stones for sure.
Yeah.
Even
Definitely.
Kyle Walker can play right center back. That'd be kind of playing FIFA mode, but it'd be pretty sick. I wouldn't be opposed. I think he actually looks pretty good in that role for England.
He does. He does.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's a good option. I think and it gives City more flexibility. Like I don't, you know, it gives Guardiola the option to change the formation up in different ways that he maybe hasn't felt comfortable doing without a real out and out left back to cover, particularly defensively.
Yeah, so it's not really like I said too. I mean, it's a very, 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 very exciting window. I'm already getting that feeling. Oh yeah, this is the year Champions League. It's gonna happen. The curse is over. It's
Whatever you say.
the past like 3 years, man. It's been really like because you're like surely we get a left back and Holland. Like, what else
Yeah.
How else can you fix this team?
Well, I mean, it pains me to say it as a United fan, and even just as a Premier League fan who doesn't like City, but it's the window of a really well-organized club where there's a couple clear holes in the team. It looks like been identified and will be filled, and probably not even for that much of a net loss given the sales that you have lined up. So um, City are an interesting team to talk about, but I think it's actually quite a straightforward window. I'm sure it is exciting as a fan, but it's just it's a very well-oiled machine where they've just got good players leaving for money and got good players coming in the door for reasonable prices.
All right, well, let's just get this party started.
Uh,
Wait, what order did we go in for me? Uh,
Sorry?
loan first.
Yeah,
Okay.
loan first.
Okay. Well, first of all, I mean that is straight away a controversial move. You want to loan Dean Henderson. You don't want to sell him, and you don't want him in the team.
Well, I mean, I've put him there because the reporting recently is that he's going to be straight loaned to Nottingham Forest. Um, I would say at this point, just sell him. It sounds like they discussed an option to buy in this loan. Forest wanted around £20 million. United were hoping for higher, so they just left it without. And obviously, if he has a good season, they'll return and discuss the sale. Um, but I think this makes sense. It gets him Premier League experience. He'll be easy to sell next summer if they want to, but it also leaves the door open if De Gea really does start to um, tail off, that they do have a ready-made replacement. It does sound like from some reporting that Henderson's been one of the dressing room leaks at United, like leaking team sheets and other sort of internal stuff to the media, which
That's
isn't a
really
great look.
is that a
Yeah,
common thing?
him, Pogba, and Lingard apparently were the big ones.
I didn't
Yeah,
hear. I don't. I'm not caught up on my Man U news.
all of our team sheets for like the last 3 seasons have been out early, like via links.
They
It's
get
it's
money, or what's their
I
incentive?
I don't know honestly. I mean it's such a strange thing because it's sort of always there in the background and discussed, but it's never really been addressed until I guess if it was Pogba, Lingard, and Henderson, and I haven't seen official reporting of that. Then Pogba and Lingard are gone, obviously. And it's a good. I mean, Henderson really thrived at Sheffield United initially when they came up, and this is a similar situation. So hopefully, it's sort of he gets the playing time he wants and leaves the door open to replace De Gea. But I don't think that you can keep him at the club if you have plans of making De Gea the number one. And if this is the best offer on the table, then fair enough. It sounds like they're paying most of his salary, and it sort of gives them a ready-made buyer next summer if that's the way they want to go.
If he has another season like he did at Sheffield, and De Gea has another season like this season where he's good enough to consider like be the starter, but he has some shit, let some squeaky ones in, or I don't know. I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't really actually know what your feeling is on De Gea, but would you want Henderson to start?
If he is really good at Forest, I think that'd be my vote. I mean, you um obviously he doesn't have the trophies behind it, but De Gea's resume at United is kind of unimpeachable. It's just in some of our darkest times being really the only player even remotely close to world class and really sticking it out and trying for us. And he's a player that clearly cares about the club. Um, that said, no one can deny that he's been on the decline. I actually think his last season was okay. It wasn't on the level of the top goalkeepers in the league, like he used to be, but it was at least passable and not filled with some of the sort of shocking blunders he's made in the past. So I think this kind of works out best for everybody. He gets one more season with no heavy competition. Um, and I really hope for him that he can recapture the form that he used to have, but it sort of feels like he's on the tail end. Um, I believe Ten Hag rates Henderson. He was linked to Ajax at one point when Ten Hag was there. So in theory, I think Henderson has as good a shot as you could expect coming off the loan if he does well to at least get a chance the following season. But for the time being, this is sort of an easy move for them to make.
So you're just trying to get an automatic 6 points off Nottingham Forest by loaning them Henderson and James Garner?
Yeah.
Because that's who you have listed for loan too.
Yeah,
For
well, I mean, the Garner one's honestly kind of ideal. I really rate him. I think the club do too. Um, I would make a case with the midfielders that we're looking at that he actually could be a starter for us at CDM for the season, or at least a rotation option. I mean, he was really good for Forest and was one of their best players in the playoff final. Didn't score the goal because it was an own goal, but took the shot that got them promoted. Um, but it's sort of an ideal step for him where he's going to get a season starting in the Premier League in comfortable and familiar circumstances as sort of a focal point for that team. Um, I think that they're at least going to give him the preseason with United so Ten Hag can take a look at him, but it's kind of even more so than Henderson, too good an opportunity to pass up to get him that Premier League experience that he probably can't get with United this year, and then bring him back. And really, I mean, if everything goes well, I don't want to jinx it, but let him walk into the team and save them 100 million on Declan Rice in an ideal world.
Wow.
I rate him. I
You
mean,
still wouldn't spend 100 mil on Declan Rice?
well, if Garner's good enough, no. And also, I think that's way more than Rice is worth, even though he's a really good player. And you'll see when we get to the buy section, however it goes down this summer, United are going to still have some holes in the team. Like it's not all getting solved in one window. So if you can put 100 million towards like two other players to fill those holes, rather than one where we can fill it internally, I think that's pretty good business.
Yeah, I mean, don't you think 100 mil shouldn't be too much for Man United to deal with though? Like in terms of how much money they generate, and if you started selling players like you should.
Yeah, but I mean, I think there's CDMs out there that can do enough of what Rice does for like half the price or less.
Like who?
Oh, don't make me go off the top of my head. It's, I guess, I mean, Chumeni went for 100 million. Maybe that is the market. But I also think United have to stop making these like Harry Maguire signings where, I mean, it's like we talked about.
Well, they've only made one of those, I would say.
Well, but it's sort of similar to I guess you could compare it to the Alexis Sanchez signing, even the Pogba signing, where you're putting so much money in transfer fee and wages and agent fees into these players that you kind of need them to be a success. And it's catastrophic if they aren't anything but perfect. I mean, obviously Maguire's been really bad. Pogba's sort of a unique um, situation. But unless, I mean, if they love Rice, if they think he's the key to making us title contenders, then fair enough. I just don't think he's worth 100 million, and I think that whether it's Garner or another CDM, you can solve that problem cheaper, which then lets you fill other holes and doesn't sort of. I mean, could you imagine if they signed Rice for 100 million and he was bad, like just didn't fit in the team, didn't adjust for whatever reason, the pressure was too much. I mean, I rate
Yeah,
him, but
yeah, not that yeah, I get the whole don't be throwing 100 mil around. Like actually, like look at if you look at the times clubs have spent over 100 million, like almost all of them have been flops. Like Griezmann, I mean, they're actually mostly Barca, but like, you know what I
well,
mean?
I
Like,
mean,
I know what you're saying.
yeah,
There's few players that can thrive on that.
I really
Declan
like
Rice
Rice.
might be one of them, but I
He
don't know
is
if he'd go to Man U over West Ham,
well.
unless you start, maybe next year if you have a good year this year.
It would be next. It would have to be next year. We have Champions League. He hasn't been signing contract extensions, and he's got 3 years left on his deal now. So it's West Ham have a pretty strong negotiating position for transfers this summer. Next summer, you can sort of start to make some headway, and maybe he isn't 100 million with 2 years left on his deal. But I think you sort of have to leave that for now. I don't, as much as I rate Garner, I don't think he's going to be the starter for this season. So to bring it back to that, I think it makes sense to loan him, see what Fred McTominay can do, which who knows, and kick their CDM can down another window, even though that's kind of painful because it's such an obvious hole in the team. But I think it does actually make sense given who's available and for the price.
Okay, I guess we should just go to keep then, and we can start talking about Fred McTominay as your
Yeah. Oh
CDM
God.
options. Okay, so you'd be comfortable leaving Tom Heaton as your backup.
I didn't actually add him to the buy. It looks like they're in for Watford's goalkeeper, not the cycling GK, unfortunately. But Daniel Bachman.
Okay.
It sounds like that'd be like 3 or 4 million. He would be the I mean, I'm actually fine with Heaton being the backup goalkeeper. I, am not particularly fussed about it, but if they feel they need a third, I think Bachman is, he started Premier League games. He certainly wouldn't displace Henderson if he comes back or De Gea this season, but is serviceable. So I think either way, I mean, Heaton's either an okay backup or a really good third string goalkeeper.
Hey, crazier things have happened, man.
It's
You could
true.
have they has a couple shockers.
Oh God.
Okay, so let me just what's your back line? What's your starting back line?
Um,
Or does that go into buy, I guess?
it's a little bit in the buy, and it's sort of up in the air. I mean, I'm not sure what Ten Hag thinks of a lot of these players, honestly. Um, probably the starting back line uh, from that list is Maguire and Varane at center back and Sean Dallow at fullback, ignoring potential signings for the time being. Um, I really rate Lindelof, and I think particularly with Ten Hag now as the manager, who sort of has this philosophy of if you're not performing, you're following instructions, you'll be benched in a way that Solskjaer certainly didn't and was really heavily criticized for playing these players um, who were in probably the worst form of their career. So I think Lindelof's kind of the ideal backup there. But I think you have to, with the investment you have in Maguire, and don't laugh, but as good as he has been outside of this last season, I think you have to give him a shot. I mean, if the season we finished second, I know I have talked a big game about Maguire, but he was one of the better center backs in the Premier League in a consistent team. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be the best or team of the season or anything, but there's a world in which he's a good center back who helps us with our build-up play. And then Varane, I think, is an obvious one. The biggest question with him is if he can stay fit, which hopefully he can. Although I mean, last season he showed he certainly is struggling with that as he gets older. But if he is fit, then I think he's an incredible center back, and he did show that in flashes. And then the fullbacks, again, if we're leaving out by, sort of pick themselves. I know Shaw is rated really highly internally at the club. He obviously didn't have a great season last year, but no one outside of Ronaldo really did. So it's hard to hold that against him. And then Dallow is sort of I don't rate him personally. Apparently Ten Hag at least wants to keep him around, but with the options there, he would be the starter at right back, which is not great, but it is what it is at the moment.
Yeah, I'm interested to know, Maguire, how do you what's the solution with him? Is it an attitude thing or like a morale thing, or do you think he needs to be accommodated? Like you need more defensive solidity around him in order to thrive, or is it a managerial system? Like
I,
he's such a enigma of a player.
I actually think
Because you're right, I've seen the numbers. His build-up
he's
numbers, his
good.
ball progression numbers,
Well, and he's incredible in
his
the air.
aerial numbers. Yeah,
Yeah. I wouldn't say it's attitude. I mean, he's actually a player who has rarely had attitude issues, um, in sort of the high profile complaining way. Um, I would take the captain's armband off him, and I think not as a slight, or I wouldn't frame it as a demotion, but just I don't think he's a player at this stage in his career, maybe ever, who's sort of equipped to have that mantle, particularly in a dressing room that has players like Ronaldo and Sancho, and hopefully we get a couple high profile midfielders in. Um, so I don't think the burden of captain has really helped him, particularly in these, uh, the quite difficult last season in particular. Um, Otherwise, I mean, it's hard to say. I think having a settled team will really help with a clear philosophy. I mean, as much as I liked Solskjaer in the moment, I don't ever think he really had a system that was defined in the way that like the elite European teams have these defined systems that help. I mean, City, there's some obvious examples of players who you would consider to be more average that look quite good because of how good Guardiola is as a man manager and how easy it is to slot into his system in particular circumstances. Otherwise, I would say, I mean, beyond the settled team, yeah, having defensive solidity around him, particularly in midfield, helps. There's plenty of clips that I see of him that are often used sort of to beat him over the head with, where he's, isolated in a 1v3 or a 2v1, or, Luke Shaw has left his man at the halfway line, and so Maguire's had to go way out of position to try and cut him off. So I think obviously I wouldn't ever argue that, particularly in the last season, he's been abysmal and has had some shocking mistakes when you see the replays. But a lot of that is also the product of the team around him, where it's just, I mean, even, replace Maguire with Diaz or Laporte, and I think they look similar last season, just on an island completely. Often left to hang out to dry. So hopefully Ten Hag is instilling a particular system. He gets one or two signings in that can help defensively. And I think that will do a world of good for Maguire.
yeah, it's crazy how much I I do think probably just purely like taken out of context, that Laporte and Diaz are still better footballers than Harry Maguire, but
Oh,
like I
yeah,
think do have those isolated moments where they're getting flamed on Twitter, and the slow mo replays where they're out of position or not covering their man or didn't challenge them in the air or whatever. But I do think, I think you said to me once, like, yeah, if you put if Harry Maguire ended up going to Man City, I don't like, he'd probably be at least talked about like John Stones, where it's like you can't deny that he's had very, very good performances and
yeah,
very, very good years and put together a good string of form, but he still has those like a mistake in him. Like it's also, I swear, just like being English, man, like the amount of pressure on the national
yeah.
team, and like they always go for those bigger fees, right? Like
Well, and he,
when's the last time you really heard about a high profile English move that someone's called it a bargain, right? Like it's always like
never, yeah,
Sterling, Stones, like it's always a move with expectations.
yeah. And I mean, he's a player who aesthetically is not very pleasing. Like when he screws up, it's a little bit like Phil Jones,
He's
where
ugly too. Talking
he he just looks like an
aesthetics.
idiot when he's trying
Fox.
to track back or run or and I probably rate him higher than most people, but I would still say that like he will always have a mistake in him and he will always not look like prime Varane in the way he's smooth and composed. But um I think there's a world where he's a good center back again for United. That not great, not world class, but good.
Okay, well, so then why are you in for a center back? Because it's not
Uh,
to replace Varane.
it's not to replace Varane. It's I honestly couldn't tell you because this is um they're not going to sell. I would be surprised. Varane, Lindelof, or Maguire. They're hopefully going to sell by Ian Jones. We'll get into that. I mean, that's not complicated. Their time is done. Um, so I'm not sure what the idea is with a center back. I think they'd like a fourth string center back, but Pau Torres, the primary name, or Urian Timber aren't fourth string center backs. Um, so I don't know what the thinking would be there, whether it's just Varane injury insurance, if they're really, maybe they know something we don't about where he's at physically. Maybe there's an offer on the table for Lindelof. I like him, but if there's a high enough offer, then I don't have a problem with him walking for to make way for Torres. It also might be a bit of a luxury move where they've had such problems with center backs that if they have the money by July and have all of their other major targets secured, he has a release clause. I think Villarreal is willing to even negotiate from there. Then it might just be a luxury move to really sort of secure that part of the team to cover for Varane being physically done, Maguire not ever recovering his form. Because there is a world where Varane gets injured 2 games in and Maguire is still last season's Maguire, and suddenly it's Lindelof and whoever our fourth string center back is.
Yeah. Do you think that your back line is equipped in terms of the profile of each player to play in a Ten Hag back line? I'm not too familiar with his tactics, but you know, do you think that's why seems to be dipping into the market for defenders? Is that he doesn't think?
It could be. I mean, Torres is the only out and out center back. I mean, both Timber and the other defensive names that we'll get to can play center back, but are also comfortable at fullback. And that's where I'd imagine they get most of their minutes initially if we do go that direction. Obviously, having them at center back cover for the reasons I just mentioned would be big. I think each of Lindelof, Maguire, and Varane are good enough to succeed in Ten Hag's system if everything goes right for them. I think Maguire in particular, well, and Lindelof too, at this with his ball playing ability, um, would be good. And Torres is an interesting name as the only out and out center back because he's a player that we've been linked to for a couple years now, like preceding Ten Hag. So I don't know if that's just he's one of the few names that overlap between Ten Hag's list and the club's list, or if he's just sort of too good a player to pass up. And if that's the case, I would get it at the price he'd be available at. I think he'll be the Spain starter for years to come. He's looked completely composed and comfortable in the Champions League, and I saw firsthand in the Europa League final. I think it might just be a case of he's a player too good to pass up.
Okay, so with, well, I guess, what I feel like we could just talk about the transfers now. Like,
Yeah, that probably makes
to
sense.
what 11 do you think? Sorry, what backline would you roll with? Like
Um, in an ideal world, I would start the season with Shaw, Maguire, Varane, and I would say Timber at right back. I don't think they're going to get Timber at this point, which is a shame. Um,
Okay, so that's what I
Louis
was asking.
Louis Van Gaal's been in his ear. Um, I think they'll probably end up getting a someone as a backup left back, whether that's I have Tyrell Malacia from Feyenoord or Lissandro Martinez from Ajax down right now. Both those are obviously players that Ten Hag has had a close look at and clearly seems to rate highly. Um, Martinez provides center back cover. Malacia is still quite young, and so wouldn't I don't think expect to start. I think Shaw is certainly going to get a run out as the starting left back, and I know he's rated highly internally, but I think it would be nice to have real competition for him beyond Tellez, who I think is probably will get to one of the players leaving the club. And then at center back, I've said Maguire and Varane. You know, I would not complain if it was Varane and Pau Torres. I don't know what Maguire and Pau Torres would look like. I don't think I'd feel great about that. Um, but I'm not too picky on the center backs, honestly. I mean, if Ten Hag loves Lindelof, then I have no problem with Lindelof starting. If it's Lindelof and Varane, I think that's a good pairing. And they actually had a couple games where they looked quite good together last season. Um, a lot of this is just I don't know which way Ten Hag's going to go. I think he's got options, but we'll see. And then right back is kind of a little scary because I really don't rate Dallo. I hope Wan-Bissaka leaves. I just don't think it's worked out. And beyond Timber, I haven't really seen any strong links to right backs. So it's not a fun prospect going into the season with Dallo as the starting right back and probably Lindelof out of position as his backup. Um, so that's yeah, not amazing, but um, that might again be just a position that isn't given the attention it needs because we have so many holes in the team still.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to project how they're gonna do because all their signings are pretty what if like iffy like what
Yeah,
that's gonna happen. Not really like I feel like you kind of have to first of all start with is Frankie De Jong gonna happen or not, and then go from there because
yeah.
I think that'd be a big like domino type move where
Well,
other people would follow.
I think that's how the club's been operating so far. Um, the numbers. It sounds like they're going to aim for 4 to 5 players this transfer window, and not all of them are going to be Frankie De Jong's level, where they sort of walk into the team and are immediately one of the best players. Um, but that's probably 2 midfielders, an attacker, and then 1 or 2 defenders, depending on um, budget and who's available. So again, as we go through the team, you'll see there's holes everywhere and a lot of positions that I don't feel amazing about. Um, so even with that level of incoming, I mean, one of the defenders will probably be Malacia or Martinez, who won't be immediate starters that transform the team. I would really hope that if there's a second defender there, it's a right back. But if Pau Torres is too good to pass up, then maybe that's just a hole that they leave until January. I mean, it sounds like the major issue with Timber is just being he wants to start for the first half of the season to preserve his World Cup spot, which is fair enough. And then Ajax don't want to sell obviously all of their players immediately, so they're sticking a little bit on that. So I could easily see them leaving right back sort of open and going into January and really targeting Timber then.
Yeah, yeah, it's not. I feel like CDM is probably a bigger priority.
Yeah, although I mean, there's a maybe this is a good time to move into the midfield
Yeah,
with the keeps and the buys. There's a position they haven't actually been strongly linked with anyone for.
does Ten Hag play 2 CDMs or do you think he'll play a solo holding
Um,
midfielder?
it's
Like,
I
how do
think it's
you?
varied a little bit at Ajax, where I mean, in their Champions League run, it was De Jong and Shona, neither of whom are really out and out CDMs, like sort of the destroyer type. Um, so I mean, I don't know what he thinks of the existing players. I don't think McTominay would be a good partner. There's a world where, at least in maybe games against lower opposition, where Frankie De Jong and Fred actually make quite a good pivot because I think both of them can defend and attack and sort of maybe combine the CDM and the number 8 role into two number eight roles almost. I don't know if that's traditional, although it does seem a little bit in line with Ten Hag's style. But I think the only CDM they've been seriously linked with beyond Phillips, who is not going to go from Leeds to Manchester United, is Conte, um, who's interesting, but feels kind of like Matic, whatever that was 4 years ago, where he's on the tail end of his prime, is really injury prone, and is not any kind of long-term solution.
I don't think he'd go to Man U either. I haven't heard
Uh,
much about that.
it was reported a couple weeks ago in the Athletic that United had discussed him and that he might be available for not an insane fee because he doesn't have much left on his contract, I don't think. But I don't think it makes sense for any number of reasons. All of which is to say, given that the two names in midfield right now look like they're De Jong and Eriksson, and we can get into Eriksson in a second, I think it'll probably be a pivot with De Jong and Fred or McTominay, depending on the game. And it might be, we talked about Garner. Maybe he stays and gets a run out there as well. But I, I mean, Fred's another one where he's not been amazing, but I rate him again. Maybe not against City away in a pivot with De Jong and him, but I think again in a really clear system where he knows where he's going forward and when he's tracking back, and with a player as competent as Frankie De Jong next to him, I think there's a potential solution there that kind of mimics those Ajax teams, not identically, but um, I don't know. In an ideal world, they'd sign a CDM. In my opinion, I would have loved to see them get Tchouameni. Not that that was ever a possibility. That's the easy solution: is De Jong, a CDM, and Bruno in the midfield. But I don't think that's going to happen. And whether that's them waiting for Rice or Garner, or there just isn't anyone on the table, or belief in Fred, which I hope, but we'll see. It'll be a funny team to watch how they line up because there's all of these questions
Yeah,
across the pitch.
yeah. I no room for Donny Van de Beek. Then are you going to play Bruno ahead of these two?
I would play. I mean, I would play Bruno. I don't know exactly where Ericsson fits because it sounds like Ten Hag sees him as close to a starter. Um,
Or
it,
Donny?
well, I think. I mean, look, this is the best chance Donny's going to get at United with Ten Hag as the manager, and I think he will get a chance. Maybe not as an immediate starter. Um, I could see him getting, subbing in for either Fred slash whatever midfielder is playing there or De Jong in cup games. In league games, he's one of the biggest mysteries at United the last couple of years for me, where he just could not get in the team at all under Solskjaer. Like it was kind of truly insane how we would have a cup game against Middlesbrough and he would be on the bench again, or a meaningless league game and he's coming on with 5 minutes left when we've either been up 3 or down 4 for the last half hour. I could not understand why he wasn't at least getting 30 minutes in those games and would get these few minute cameos. It sounded like the staff didn't think he was up for it in the Premier League, but I know there was stories about him putting on muscle and doing all sorts of preseason training after his first season, and it just sort of persisted. So I really hope Ten Hag gives him a chance. He looked okay at Everton, although it was not an ideal situation to be getting Premier League minutes at Everton with them near the relegation zone. So I really hope he gets what he should have gotten in his first season, which is just cup minutes and cameo appearances, and go from there. If it doesn't work out, then it doesn't work out, and he's probably not a player they're really seriously planning for in their core. But I still like him, and I'd like to see what he can show in at least limited minutes.
I don't think. I think Ten Hag. It's not out of the realm of possibility that Donny and Bruno both play. Like,
Yeah,
he played Tadic and Ziyech out wide, right?
that's
Like
true.
he's not looking for natural wingers. Maybe in the Premier League he'll want to, but yeah, like I don't know. And same with Ericsson, he can play out wide too. I don't know if it'd be maybe with Ronaldo would be a good idea, but
Yeah,
maybe that's where we should go next because well, I guess we didn't even talk about wingers.
yeah. I think the wingers are actually pretty straightforward. Sancho's nailed on whichever wing you want to put him on, and that's its own debate. I don't have a strong opinion. Um, Rashford's going to get a go. I hope. I mean, he's been doing all this sort of ever since the season ended. He's been training, and there's all the reports about him doing long runs every morning and working with specialized trainers, and he's coming back early. So, I mean, he's had 20-goal seasons. You would hope that Ten Hag can get him back to something approaching that. We'll see. They've been really strongly linked to Anthony in the last week or so, who's a player that Ten Hag obviously really likes and who I wouldn't say no to. But I think my preference, I've on our list there, I've put little asterisks next to Ahmad, Palistri, and Garnacho. I would rather see them use the money on Anthony elsewhere, maybe at right back if they can only get one player from Ajax, um, and give those guys a chance to shine. I mean, they've all sort of had interesting moments. Neither Ahmad nor Palistri had loans that worked out well at Rangers and Alaves in La Liga, respectively. But Palistri is a starter for Uruguay, and Ahmad's a player they spent 30 to 40 million on as a prospect, and has looked really. I mean, he's looked 3 classes above any of the youth team matches that he's played. So honestly, I would rather they save the money from Anthony and let Ahmad, Palistri, Garnacho, and Rashford even just duke it out for the winger slot opposite from Sancho. Because I think, I mean, they're all at different stages in their development, Rashford in particular, obviously. But I think one of those four has it in them, particularly with Ten Hag as their manager, to really, I think, take that position and run with it.
Yeah, it's a move where I think, yeah, Anthony would definitely improve your club. I think you could argue he'd be even one of the best players in the team, but
Yeah.
there's definitely bigger holes in the team. And it's going to be a situation like you talked about again, where you give a player a bunch of money. He plays in a team, he plays pretty well, but there's team doesn't do well because there's holes in the team and he gets
Yeah.
low on confidence and there's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, so he starts playing worse. Like you can avoid that by making a decent 11 and then signing Anthony and bringing him into a team, and that's if like all those wingers you just listed didn't work out.
Yeah.
um Rashford's someone I definitely want to talk about because there's a lot of discussion about him just looking not up for it and him looking like he doesn't love football. So but obviously the technical and physical skills are there. So, and of course he's your club academy project. Like
Yeah.
you want him honestly probably more than anyone in the team to be doing well.
Yeah, absolutely. He's another sort of mystery. He had I think he had surgery early last season, and came back and actually looked really good. He had like 3 goals in 3 games when he came back, and I know at least one of those was in a pretty humiliating defeat to Leicester. But he individually at least looked good, and then just really fell off the cliff mid-season. I don't know if it was Solskjaer getting sacked. I know he was declining before then. Um, so it's hard to pinpoint what it was. He's a player who's played a ton of minutes from a really young age, so it might just be wear and tear, and maybe we might be, doing this podcast next summer, looking back, going, actually falling out of the team and not playing for England has been really good for him, just to help sort of recover his body and get into peak shape. I think the club and Rashford have both been really clear that they're not looking for moves away. I mean, they want to make it work. Like I said, he's had seasons where you're going, is he one of the sort of premier youth talents in Europe? And he's obviously old enough now that he's out of that youth bracket. But it would be incredibly disappointing for this to be the end of his United career so early and in such a sort of just sad. And so, like I said, he's doing all the right things right now. I think Ten Hag's a manager who can get the best out of him. And there's been reports where he said he feels he needs to be man managed, which is, I think, strange at this point in his career. But if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. So I think a front three of Rashford, Ronaldo, and Sancho, if they're all playing at their best with that, with the midfield that it looks like we'll have behind them, is actually kind of lethal. But we'll see. I mean, that's just on paper. I hope he can hit that. But last season he showed that he can't at the moment.
Yeah, I only experienced it through you, but I mean, it kind of felt the same way last year when you looked at that possibility of that front three being a thing.
Yeah.
But I think that's just because the problems at Man United run so deep, and
Yeah.
they can't be solved with a summer of transfers. So I think I just want to ask you before our time runs out that what are your expectations for the season? Like he's certainly going to need a season where he's just whatever he does, he's not going to get the sack. Like he's just got to figure out this team. He's got to get the team playing well enough that people want to come to United. I feel like you need a couple seasons where you're just qualifying for the Champions League consistently before like. But the problem, from as far as I can see, is that as soon as you guys kind of take a step in the right direction, the expectation is right back to be
Yeah.
winning the Premier League and winning the Champions League. But, barring anything incredible, I think you're going to have to accept that Man United, Liverpool, and Chelsea are probably all in a better position than you for at least the next 2-3 years.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. I mean, I think there's probably three major things that Ten Hag has to achieve this season. One is successful signings. I mean, start to bring in players, hopefully like De Jong, whether it's Anthony Torres, or other names that we have yet to see. Bring in players who are going to come into the team and make it better immediately. Just successful signings. That shouldn't be the bar, but it is for United at the moment. Second is improve existing players, and whether that's looking at some of the youth wingers that we've talked about, or Garner if he stays, sort of getting them playing. I think actually the Europa League is a great opportunity to just really give them a run out and give them minutes. But he did it at Ajax, obviously developing these younger players. So I think you'd love to see him translate that to United and get some of these more prospect level players up to snuff, but also the starters. I mean, Maguire and Rashford we've talked about, but really, I mean, Bruno had a down year. Fred and McTominay both have higher ceilings. Shaw's been down. You'd like to see him with at least a few of those first team players also start to revive, get them back to at least a level of sort of above average starter. And I think that's attainable, but that's certainly something he needs to do if he wants to succeed. And then third, obviously, is results. And right now, I think the bar for results is Champions League. There's a big part of the fan base that's clamoring about trophies. And, I'd love to see even an FA Cup, the value of a League Cup. So something to hold up and have as an accomplishment, but I think getting back in the Champions League has to be the first priority. And those cups are meaningless. I really couldn't care less about the FA Cup. If he wins it, fantastic, and I'll use it to, count against City's inevitable league title. But Champions League is the goal. No one's expecting them to compete for the league this season, expectations for next season will be set based on what happens this season, but I don't think it's realistic to ask. So a measured improvement in results leading to Champions League, just to show that he's taking steps forward. And I don't think that's too much to ask. It's a stacked field in the Prem right now, but I think that's a reasonable goal.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. That's the club objectives that Vincent Ferris has laid out for the year. We'll see how it works out, and whether you'll be having a meeting with Ten Hag about the sack or about a contract extension.
God, I hope not.